Hey, podcast fam, Eric here. And if you're an affiliate marketer or looking to monetize your online presence, you need to know about ShareASale.com. ShareASale is not just an affiliate network. It's your gateway to a world of opportunities. With thousands of high-paying affiliate programs across various niches, ShareASale connects you with top brands ready to collaborate with content creators like you. Imagine earning commissions for simply sharing products you love. Whether you're into fashion, tech, or lifestyle, ShareASale has got a partnership waiting for you. Ready to turn your passion into profits? Head over to MilwaukeeMafia.com/ShareASale and sign up today. It's free, it's easy, and it's your ticket to unlocking a new revenue stream for your business.
You're listening to Milwaukee Mafia, your weekly podcast dose of Wisconsin Mafia and true crime history.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We're back for another episode of the Mafia. My name is Eric Walterkins.
I'm Gavin Schmidt.
And Gavin, sounds like you got something good for us today. What do you got?
I do. We're going to call this Many Murders.
Many murders.
Making up for all the lack of murders. All in one episode.
So how many murders are we going to talk about? Or is it so many you can't even give us a count?
Gosh, it's not that many. I don't know, maybe 5. I'm not sure.
Holy crap, we'll
find out.
We'll take her away for us.
Okay, so what I've got here is I grouped together these murders that happened between August 1910 and March 1912, so about a year and a half. And the reason I grouped them together is because the records are just so thin. The newspapers didn't cover them in great detail, and again, the spellings are terrible, so you can't always follow along so well. The police records from this time don't exist anymore, so we don't have the police records. So you're lucky if you get a report in the paper the one day and then you get a follow-up the next day, and that's about all you get. So I'm just going to kind of stream these together so you get an idea of just what it was like in this neighborhood for about this year and a half period. And I mean, and keep in mind, this is like smaller than a square mile. It's like if there's a murder and you live here, it's not like it's happening somewhere across town. Like all of these are within a couple blocks of your house. So not pleasant. Okay, so the first one is Antonio Navetta. This is August 1910. His throat is slit from ear to ear. He is staying in a boarding house. He had actually just come to Milwaukee earlier that year, and as many as 50 other men lived in the same building as him. That's how much they were packing them into these boarding houses. Yeah, so he's killed. $500 is stolen from his room, which is a lot of money in those days. And he had only received the money just a day before from the Milwaukee Italian Mutual Savings Bank. He had settled an insurance claim for a work injury. Now, it's sort of suspicious that he was killed and robbed the day after he got this, so there was some suspicion that maybe somebody at the bank was kind of tipped off Mafia. Yeah. Now, the bank was run by Michael Cicero, and it had some questionable trustees. One, a man named Dominic Leone, who we'll come back to in a future episode. Spoiler alert, he dies. Well, I shouldn't say they all die, but I mean, he gets killed. So, remember the name Dominic Leone. Now, Navetta did not die without a struggle. Chairs were tipped over. The cot was tipped over. A table was broken. A man randomly stopped by, saw the mess, the blood, everything, called the police. Detectives John Sullivan and Arthur Burns arrived, and the body was still warm. They found a passport and several letters in his coat pocket. They found a towel that the murderer used to try to wipe up the blood.
Cleaning up after himself.
Cleaning up after himself. But they couldn't really make heads or tails of it. They questioned people. They got nowhere. They found a dollar bill with blood on it that was used at a local bar. They thought, well, maybe this was taken. This is maybe the blood from the murder. But again, they talked to the bartender, and the bartender said he didn't remember who he got it from. Apparently, the bartender didn't seem to care that he had a bloody dollar bill. So they couldn't really do much about it. And at this point in time, you got to keep in mind that they didn't even really have such things as like blood types or anything. So if the murderer was cut during like this scuffle, they couldn't really do anything about it. They couldn't say, oh, the murderer has type A blood. They didn't, obviously there was no DNA. So, like, if you didn't have a witness, you really couldn't do a whole lot of anything. Just out of trying to be thorough, they ended up arresting a bunch of people, including mob boss Vito Guardalabene. They pick him up for questioning. It doesn't tell them anything, obviously. He declines to make any statement, but the police note that he has a large roll of bills on him. He's carrying quite a bit of money, not necessarily the murder money, but he's doing okay.
Yeah, and you would expect him to have a large amount of money with him at all times, pretty much, because I'm assuming he was quite rich at that point in time.
Mm-hmm. So Inspector Reamer, who we met last time, the
very honest cop, he says, "I can tell you one thing, we're working on a big thing. If what we believe from the evidence presented to us is true, then this is something bigger than has engaged our attention for a long time." Very cryptic. Not really sure exactly what he was hinting at there. This place, again, the Third Ward, it's gross. I mean, we're going to say this again and again. It's built on top of, a place burned down. The garbage is nasty. The health inspector doesn't like it. There's slum lords. Again, they're packing 50 in a building here. And they're sort of like the people in charge are sort of questionable. One of the two detectives in charge of this area, Detective John Sullivan, who I just mentioned, his sister is one of the property owners. And one of the other property owners is actually a Wisconsin Supreme Court justice.
Wow.
So, it's some well-connected slum lords in the area. Along with that, you have Mike Vitucci, who's living in the area. He's sort of like the good guy. He's the opposite of Vito Guardalabene. So he's trying to help out the police and that sort of thing. What can he do? These people don't want to talk. He starts coming home on January 1910. He gets in a quarrel with someone who's boarding at his house, a man named Tiberio Marola, who, again, I might be saying that wrong. Sorry about that. While staying in the house, Marola's eye caught the sight of Vitucci's 19-year-old daughter, Anna. Word soon turned to action, and Marola pulled out his revolver and shot Vitucci in the groin, bringing him to the ground. Vitucci was taken to the emergency hospital in serious condition by his family, and Marola fled to nearby Waukesha. Within hours, Marola was located and returned to Milwaukee. He freely admitted shooting Vitucci, and he had no remorse about it. Vitucci recovered, and Marola was charged with assault with intent to kill. Now, a strange thing happens here. When it comes to come to trial, he ends up getting acquitted of the charge. And do you know why he gets acquitted of the charge?
I have no idea.
Because between being arrested and court date, he actually marries the daughter.
The daughter
of the guy he shot.
So how does that get him acquitted for killing the guy?
Well, he didn't kill him. He didn't kill him.
Oh, he just shot him.
He just shot him. He ends up recovering.
Okay.
And if he would have killed him, he'd be in some serious trouble.
Okay.
But because between the fight and the court date, he marries the daughter, the guy's like, well, now you're my son-in-law, so I'm not going to...
I'm going to drop the charge.
Yeah,
we're cool. We're cool.
Bizarre.
So this guy, he's married to the man's daughter. They end up having 5 children. That's happy. So that's great.
That same month, a man named Joe Bergerino receives a letter that claims to be from the Black Hand. The note says, "Dear friend, you should pay us $500 or we will blow up your store and kill your family. We strike in the dark. Beware. This is the second of 3 letters that will be sent to you. If you do not pay any attention to the third letter, we will do as we have said already. You are to give the money, which is to be in bills, to someone who is all right. We will warn you again, then beware." This is some questionable language here. Now, Bergerino says that he never actually received a first letter. He disregarded the second threat as nonsense. A third letter never arrived as far as he knows, and he doesn't know who this all right person was he was supposed to give the money to. But despite this lack of a final warning, his grocery store was in fact torn apart by an explosion late at night on Valentine's Day. Dynamite was placed in the alley against the side of his 3-story building. His neighbors also had their home damaged. His family received cuts all over their body, flying glass. They had slits on their face, hands, any other part of their body that was exposed. His wife went into a state of shock. Joe was on the 3rd floor playing cards with friends at the time. It's just a mess. Now, strangely enough, even though this bomb went off, shattering glass and knocking the house the grocery store and house right off the foundation, apparently nobody died.
Oh, that's good.
Inspector Reamer comes back. He rounds up 2 suspects, but doesn't get very far in the investigation. A bomb expert from Chicago arrives, and he wasn't of very much help. One of the men arrested had previously been picked up after the murder of Antonio Nevada, who was at the beginning of our story today. Nothing ends up really happening, and Joe Bergerino says to the newspaper, he goes, "Oh, don't worry about it. When we find out who did it, we'll fix them ourselves." I have been here many, many years. I work very, very hard. Now look what they have done to me. So he's not afraid. He doesn't need the police. Joe Bergerino being a target is something of a surprise to me because he's actually related to 2 prominent members of the local mafia, a man named Joe Gamina, another man named Pasquale Miglioccio. And again, sorry if I'm not great on the names. So I think that he'd be fairly connected, but despite this, he was a target. We move on to March 1911.
Let's go back.
Yeah, okay.
Previous one for 1 second. So
Sure.
You said that this guy's well connected to the mafia, and it's strange that they would target him. How do we know that these crimes are actually done by mafia people? Because we don't. You're just making that assumption that these were mafia hits.
We don't know. The problem is that these letters are, they're anonymous. And so we know that this is a mafia tactic that they would do. They would extort money out of people that they knew had money. Like a grocery store owner would have pretty decent money by those standards.
But because they're anonymous, we don't always know it's the mafia. Other people could be like, "Oh, that's a really good idea. I'm going to do that too." And this actually created a big fear at the time. I mean, all throughout the country, there was these things called Black Hand letters. And so the newspapers said, "Oh, there's this entire Black Hand organization that's doing this all around the country." And that's just not true. I mean, the guys who are doing it in Milwaukee have no connection to the guys doing it in Chicago or doing it in Cleveland or wherever else. I don't know where they picked this up from, but they all just started kind of doing this same thing. But there's really no connection between one and another.
Other than the fact that maybe one guy from Chicago saw some guy from Milwaukee doing it and started doing it in Chicago, and that it just kind of ballooned in that way.
Yeah, I mean, my impression is that the newspaper is creating this idea that, oh, the Black Hand is blowing people up. So if you sign letters of Black Hand, people are like,
"Oh, crap, I heard about them. They're nasty." So, you don't have to be any part of this, and you can use that as, just to scare people. That's my impression, because there isn't actually a real organization of criminals across the country that are the Black Hand organization. But if you read the newspapers at the time, that's the way they presented it. The papers did a really big part in
ballooning this
into a
bigger issue than it needed to be.
Yeah.
Sound familiar, anyone?
Did you get on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so now we're on March 1911. We got a man named Joe Zami, or Zami. Again, I could be saying this wrong. He's a garbage collector, running theme in these stories. He's doing his rounds, picking up garbage. In the middle of his round, he decides to stop at the local tavern and have several glasses of wine. Another running theme. He's stopping in the middle of work to have drinks.
They don't do that anymore?
Maybe they do. I don't know. So he's having several glasses of wine. He's hanging out with his friend, who is another garbage collector. They're exchanging funny stories, having a good time. And then right in the middle of it, his friend
suddenly gets angry and tells Zombie, "Get back to work." Now, Zombie's like, "Well, why are you going to tell me to get back to work? You're also not at work."
And his friend says, "Well, I'm the boss," which he was not. He drew out his revolver and he shot Zombie in the side 2 or 3 times. Other men are scattering. One of them was kind enough to bring Zombie to the hospital, where he was told that his wounds were not serious. Unfortunately, once the surgeon came in, the surgeon was like, "Oh no, this is pretty serious." So he was actually paralyzed and did ultimately die for being shot.
These people seem to have tempers on them that are pulling these triggers? Like, really? Guy tells you that you should be at work, and you're like, well, the only solution to this problem is I'm going to shoot you.
Yeah, and keep in mind, like my primary source here is the newspaper. So the newspaper, what really happened and what the paper reported may not be entirely the same story.
Very true.
Yeah, the only other thing I could do was get coroner's inquest reports, which just, for those who don't know, coroner inquest report is this thing where they would gather up like a group of people and they would ask them what they think happened, and they would use that as a document to try to charge somebody with a crime. But again, if these people aren't going to talk to the police or the coroner,
The coroner's inquest is a pretty worthless document.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting. So were they just like people that were in the community that they were asking them to?
Yeah, okay. So we'll take a slight detour. I'll explain that.
Yeah.
So now today, most counties have a medical examiner.
Okay.
And the medical examiner, if someone has died of something that's obviously not just a heart attack or whatever,
They'll come in, they'll examine them, maybe do an autopsy, and they'll come up with a cause of death. Well, it used to be that a lot of counties didn't have a medical examiner. They just had a coroner. And a coroner, this may come as a shock to some people, but a coroner is an elected position. You don't have to be a doctor to be a coroner.
Okay.
So before counties had a medical examiner, the coroner would gather together these people to try to determine what happened. If they were lucky, one of the people they call is a doctor, but not necessarily. I mean, sometimes they would just gather 6 people, look at the body, ask a few questions, and come up with their best guess. So, yeah, I know.
Very flawed way of doing
Yeah.
it. But I guess if that was the best you had, that was the best you had.
Yeah, this is not something that comes up in this story, but I have run across situations where, being friends with the coroner has its advantages because the
Coroner can write basically anything they want as the cause of death. So if you're like, oh yeah, you totally fell, like if you don't have a doctor actually examining it, the coroner can write just about anything. Yeah, that system got much improved.
So the police are out there looking for this guy who just shot his friend in the bar. He's got
A little short black mustache. He's got a fur cap, dark clothes. He's wandering around, and they actually find him just walking the streets. On his possession, he's got a knife. He's got the loaded gun. The police say that the gun smelled freshly fired, so that's not a good sign for him. He's brought into the police station for questioning. Where he was wandering around, I don't know, but they did find him and brought him in. First-degree murder charges were brought against him. Now, at the trial, he was found guilty, sentenced to 25 years in Waupun State Prison. The sentence was later reduced to 15 years, and he was out in time to get involved in bootlegging during Prohibition. So, ultimately, you kill a guy, you get 15 years. Not too bad.
Now, did they have like parole and stuff back then where he gets out early, or was that just what he was sentenced for killing somebody?
Well, yeah, like I said, he was originally 25 years, but it was dropped to 15. He did file an appeal, and they reduced it.
Okay, so they had some sort of system.
Yeah, he could get parole, but he wasn't paroled. The courts gave him leniency. Yeah, he used to not get that much time. Like, it wasn't strange to get 12, 15 years for killing a guy. Like now, I mean, it's
automatic life, but it used to be like, oh, you killed a guy, that's cool. Maybe you'll get. Okay, still going.
Still got more murders?
Yeah, now we're November 1911. We're still in 1911, so just keep in mind, this is a crazy year.
This is 1 year and what? You said 3 blocks, basically?
Yeah.
Is that when this is all happening?
Luigi Regnetti and Anastito Cascona, and again, this could be terribly mispronounced because I'm relying on newspaper spellings here. They were held up by 2
or 4 unidentified men while walking home from work. They were robbed of somewhere between $50 and $250. For the 2 men, 4 men? Was it 50? Was it 250? I don't know. But either way, they were just outside of the 3rd Ward of walking home when the assailants jumped out from behind nearby boxcars. Both of the men were stabbed, slashed, and beaten with an object that was believed to either be a wagon spoke or a pickaxe. So, again, who knows? The one man was cut 18 times, but he still managed to hobble to a nearby house before losing consciousness. They were rushed to the hospital, received emergency treatment, but died. The one man died of a skull fracture and brain. The other man had to get 57 stitches. He actually survived for a while. That sort of, made him not have the greatest life. And the attackers were never found.
Now, what blows my mind about that story? Is the fact that in early 1900s you would get 57 stitches. I figure if you needed 57 stitches, they'd probably just let you die. I mean,
that was one of the things they could do. That was at least one.
Yeah, I suppose, because it's just a pin in a needle, so or thread in a needle, so yeah, interesting.
Okay, couple months later, about 2 months later, Dominic Siliberto left the home he shared with Dominic Fry to go buy groceries. He stops at the bakery.
And then he stops at a tavern, of course, owned by another friend of his. Now, he had formerly tended bar there, so he was welcomed by the other people in the bar. They all knew who he was because he used to be the bartender. But after he left, he was unexpectedly hit with 3 shots from an unknown assailant, the bullets penetrating his left arm, left shoulder, and left lung. Louis Costarello rushed over when he heard the shots, found Siliberto on the ground moaning, and flagged down a squad car. And squad car we're using loosely here because it's not an actual car. Again, this is like police officer Arthur Burns arrived with an ambulance. Siliberto was still alive when he reached the hospital, but refused to name his assailant. When told by Detective Burns that he was not going to live, Siliberto remained firm. I don't know. He is a bigger man, is all he would say. A priest came to talk to him, saying, you're going to die. And he told the priest, well, his name might have been Sam. A doctor removed the bullets, but it was too late. He died the next morning of a perforated lung. He left behind a wife. They tried to find the killer. They brought up 20 Italians into the police station trying to get answers, but the newspaper said it was futile and hopeless, and sure enough it was. They got nowhere. On the night of March 1912, so this is March 23rd, 1912, this is less than a month after this last one, Gaetano Canizzo, who went by the name of Tommy Guy, he was stabbed 20 times in the back with a 2-edged stiletto. The man was barely breathing. He was coughing up blood, but he was found by a passerby in a vacant lot. He had put up his arms to block the slashes, but that only ended up getting him cut on his arms a whole lot more. At the hospital, he said he had been actually stabbed by his cousins. He actually did name who attacked him. He said he was attacked by his cousins, Carlo and Joseph DiMaggio. Coincidental or not, Carlo DiMaggio actually lived in the same house as Vito Guardalabene, the mob boss. And Canizzo lived next door. Police end up searching DiMaggio's bedroom. He found 2 .45 rifles, 4 revolvers, multiple stilettos, because you always need more stilettos, several boxes of cartridges. Detectives brought the DiMaggio brothers to the hospital, and they again asked Canizzo, are these the guys who attacked you? Carlo put his finger to his lips, making the silent symbol. And Canizzo said, oh, no, those aren't the guys. My mistake. I thought it was my cousins, but it was not. No charges were pursued. This was not the last time the police would see the DiMaggios. There was no motive ascertained in this attack, and the police weren't really sure how he ended up in this lot. But the cause wasn't robbery. They didn't really know what was going on. But again, he ends up dying of all these stab wounds. No charges were filed against the DiMaggios or anyone else. So this is just a run of murders and attempted murders in the Third Ward over about a 1.5-year period. And I don't know if you caught the running theme here, besides of how violent it is, but other than the one guy who went to court and had the charges dropped, nobody is ever arrested for any of this.
That's crazy. And it's just, but I mean, if the people aren't going to talk,
yeah.
I mean, what do? especially in those times, what more evidence do you have?
Yeah, but it's just like, so I wasn't counting, but let's say there's 5 people who were murdered. That's bad enough. But you got 5 murderers.
Yep.
In your
neighborhood, yeah. Well, unless it's all the same murderer.
Unless it's just one guy. but yeah, you've got guys who should probably be in prison, wandering your neighborhood.
And your whole, not to mention that on top of that, your whole neighborhood is protecting. I mean, at least somebody is protecting that person, because you know that in the neighborhood this small, this many murders, like somebody's going to know something and isn't speaking. So, which is terrifying.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah. Now, is this like an abnormally awful patch of time that you found, or could you put together segments of like this throughout like a 10-year history while the Mafia was running rampant, that stuff like this was happening?
Okay, so as you're going to find out in future episodes, this might be slightly higher than usual, but it's definitely not the end. There's going to be several more murders over the next few years. These are just, like I said, I just kind of grouped them together because the records are so scarce. The police records no longer exist. The prison records obviously don't exist because nobody went to prison. So there isn't a whole lot. Each one of these, could be its own chapter or, its own episode if I had the information. But the records just don't exist.
And do you think that, like you said, this could have been very high? Do you think this could have just been high because at this period of time, the police were just figuring out how to deal with this type of crime, and then as time has gone by, they just got better at it, and then hopefully either did a better. I guess they're not going to be preventing murders, though. They're only going to be.
I guess not so much.
Yeah, they're just going to be better at finding the person that does it, but. Who knows? Maybe three of those murders were the same person, and if they would have caught that person, they would have. Well,
Again, I'll tell you, spoiler alert. They don't get a whole lot better at catching them.
They don't.
No. Okay. I mean, up through the 70s and 80s, there's the murder rate drops significantly, but through the 70s and 80s, not a single person
is
arrested for the murders. So all the way up into the modern times.
That's crazy.
If you're a mob guy and you get shot, your killer's going to walk away.
And do you, like, getting into the more of the modern time, 70s, 80s, do you think that the police are just, if you're a mob guy and you get killed, you're just like, they just don't care? Like, they're not really going to pursue it because you were a bad guy, per se?
Well, I think that's part of it. I mean, there's one case that, again, we'll get to it, but in the 50s, and I have the police file, and the police file was like 1,400 pages. I mean, it's massive. So it's not like they didn't try. But again, I mean, you're not going to have people coming and talking to you. And one of the biggest problems, I feel, with a mob murder is you don't know. Like, most murders are husband kills wife, wife kills husband. It's really obvious. Like, if a wife is dead, you know within 5 minutes who did it. But with the mob murder, even if you know it's a mob murder, that doesn't mean you know who did it. Because it's who got told to do it. Right. It's not somebody who had a personal issue with the guy.
Yeah, you ask 30 people potentially that could have been the guy that pulled that trigger.
Exactly.
You might even know who all 30 of them are, but right. You have no way of knowing which of the 30 actually did it.
Right, precisely.
And none of them are going to speak. None of them are going to tell you which of the 30 did it.
Yeah, so that's the problem. I mean, if you're the police or you're the district attorney or whatever, I mean, you got to have the evidence to actually say who's the guy who pulled the trigger. And that's hard to do. I mean, you might know who was mad at the guy who ordered him killed. Like, that part you might know. But who actually did it? The guy who did it isn't the guy who, they got in a fight, like you owed money or something. That's not the guy. So, yeah, there's definitely some major roadblocks in trying to solve that stuff.
One more question, and this might be off topic, and you might be coming to this, so if you don't want to answer...
We're already a little off topic.
But I'm curious if we're going to hear at some point in time, like back in these time frames up till the 70s, you would say the Mafia was pretty rampant in Milwaukee. Would you say? I mean, it was definitely there.
Yeah, okay. Yes, I didn't mean by rampant.
But it was definitely there.
Yes.
But today you can't for certainly say that it's there.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about what changed that would bury this? I mean, they were so successful.
Way off topic.
Yeah. And if this is something we'll come to in a future episode, we'll
not do that.
wait.
That's so no. Well, we can. I mean, that's.
I think it's on topic.
No, that's getting way into what ends up bringing them down and everything else. I mean, that's
Okay. So there is a story to what did bring them down.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a major bust.
See. So now we just created a massive cliffhanger for people that
it's going to be a very long cliffhanger because right now we're only in the 1910s and 1920s, so they're going to have to wait a while.
But yeah.
We'll hang around episode 300. All right. I will stop asking unrelated questions and we can read.
It's all right. I was saying that's a whole at least half hour in itself. So let's not go down.
Okay. So that'll wrap up this episode unless you got something else you want to talk about.
No, I think that's about it. But yeah, if you'd like to, this list of murders, good, because it's going to be like that for a long while.
All right, then why don't you hit them with contact info if they want to reach out to you?
Absolutely. You can now reach me at MilwaukeeMafia@gmail.com. I have a website also, MilwaukeeMafia.com, which is sometimes functioning. So you can check.
It'll be back in 2 days.
Okay, so you can check that out, and I keep a lot of writing on there. So anything that isn't in a book yet is actually on there. I'm happy to share what I have. So check that out. Do some research. Have fun.
And definitely give us questions. If anybody out there has any sort of connection to the Milwaukee Mafia that might want to come on as a guest, we would love to do an interview with somebody that might have something to share that even Gavin could learn from.
We want that.
Don't you?
Yeah.
So reach out to him if you do.
All right. Well, thanks, Eric. I'll talk to you again next week.
Yep. Thanks, everybody, and tune in next week for another episode.
Thanks for tuning in to the Milwaukee Mafia podcast. Join us next week for another look back at Wisconsin Mafia and true crime history.
Hey there, e-commerce enthusiasts. Let me tell you about a game changer in shipping, ShipStation. It's the ultimate platform for simplifying your shipping process. With ShipStation, you can easily import, manage, and ship your orders in no time. It integrates seamlessly with your favorite e-commerce platforms and carriers, ensuring a smooth workflow. Gain valuable insights with their powerful analytics and reporting tools. Say goodbye to shipping headaches. Visit MilwaukeeMafia.com/ship and level up your shipping game today.